In 1649, the Reverend John Pinney lived in Broad Windsor, Dorset. John and his wife Jane had 11 children. Jane made lace for the wealthy. Together they had substantial properties. John is today buried in the local Broad Windsor churchyard. Azariah Pinney fought for the Duke of Monmouth in the Battle of Sedgemoor, 1685. The Duke of Monmouth believed he had been denied his birthright. He was the illegitimate son of King Charles II and fought his uncle King James II for the crown. The battle commenced at 4 a.m. The rebels were unaware that King James's army had been forewarned of the battle's timing. The battle for the Duke of Monmouth was lost. The hanging judge, Judge Jeffreys, at the bloody assizes, sent 500 to their death or transportation. Azariah's life was spared by his sister, who paid a ransom for his life. He was, however, transported to Nevis in the West Indies. Azariah was banished from England for 15 years and sailed on the bark Rose Pink under Captain Wogan to the island of Nevis in the West Indies. Fortunately, Azariah's brother Nathaniel was already trading in the West Indies, and Azariah became his agent, importing lace and tools for the plantations. They also exported sugar back to England. Azariah started buying property. In 1697 he purchased Bordens and Charlottes, which ran down to the beach. This is now known as Pinney's Beach and enabled speedy exporting and importing of goods. Azariah's son John ran the large plantation on Nevis and became Chief Justice. John married Mary Helm, and 2 plantations of 273 acres were formed, called Mount Ravers. The remains of Mount Ravers plantation are still there today. Azariah's grandson was John Pinney I. He inherited Azariah's fortune and became the MP for Bridport. He built a mansion at Racedown to retire to. John Praetor was distantly related to John Pinney and obtained the family fortune on the proviso that he took on the surname Pinney. With his wife, he spent 20 years in Nevis before returning to Bristol. There he built a Georgian home, which is today a museum. This would have been the view from John's window, and here's the view today. John returned with a slave named Pero. A book was written about his life in the 18th century Bristol. Pero's bridge was built in his honour. John returned to his manor at Bettiscombe with the manservant. On his deathbed, John promised him his return to the West Indies. This was not done, and today, if the remaining skull is removed from the manor, screams are heard and strange happenings occur. Charles Pinney was the Lord Mayor of Bristol in 1831. And he had the unenviable task of 3 times reading the Riot Act, for which he was lucky to escape with his life.
Whereas of late many rebellious riots and clergy, and the offenders therein shall be adjudged felons, and shall suffer death, as in a case of
Samuel and Emma Pinney left England on January the 1st, 1851. They sailed on the bark Constantine, bound for New Zealand. The ship's manifest had incorrectly spelt Pinney without an E. Therefore, that spelling is unique to New Zealanders. Samuel and Emma's long voyage had huge difficulties. Amongst them was seasickness, illness, poor food, cramped conditions and storms. Women and children were often not allowed ashore for fear of becoming ill from the natives. After 6 months at sea, Samuel and Emma arrived in Nelson, New Zealand. They settled in Motueka. With 8 children, Samuel and Emma had a large family: Louis, Laura, Hattie, Anne, Mary, Harry, Frederick and William. They made a living growing hops and tobacco. In 1897, Samuel and Emma moved to Eltham and cleared land for a new farm. Samuel passed away in Wellington in 1889 and Emma passed away aged 73 in 1902. Harry was one of their children, and here is his 1923 obituary. Another of Samuel and Emma's children was Frederick. He owned a music store at 7 Manners Street, Wellington. A newspaper article from 1897 describes his business and personal life, including Samuel and Emma's arrival in New Zealand. Frederick died in 1933. He left an heirloom for the Pinney family. The 1870s music box is made in Geneva and plays 8 tunes, each tune one rotation of the barrel. In 1915, William Pinney, known as Les, married Anne Grantham. The Pinney and Grantham families met for a very special event, a photograph. Hold still now for 20 seconds. One wedding gift they received was a soup tureen made by Wiltshire and Wood of England. This is now a family heirloom.
And I was meant for you.
Another heirloom is two watercolours of the South Island, painted by Anne in 1911.
You were all the sweet things rolled up in one. You're like a plaintive melody.
This is Les and Annie's homestead in Eltham, where two sons were born. Verdon was born in 1915 and Fred in 1918. Verdon died at only 16 years old. He had contracted tuberculosis. Here's Fred at 3 years old. In October 1922, Annie passed away, only 32 years old. Her grave today is at the Eltham Cemetery. Les and Fred worked on the Eltham farm together. Fred was paid only 2 shillings and 6pence a week. However, this included his food and lodging. Here's the homestead they lived in. In 1942, Fred left the farm to go to war. In 1960, Leslie passed away, and sadly the farm went out of the Pinney family. However, Pinney Road in Eltham remains in Leslie's honour.